Testing, testing, bananas and cheese. You can all hear me? Awesome. Thanks, guys. So up now we have Amanda, and Amanda is going to be talking about coping skills for kids. So she works with kids. I've done an interview with her. She's absolutely gorgeous. She's amazing. So please listen on in. I will be, we've also got some updated PDFs to send to everybody. So I will place the old ones inside of the chat, but we will email you the new ones once we're done. Okay, so Amanda, take it away, Dar.
Thanks, everybody. Hello. And what I will do first of all is I will share my screen so I can share my presentation that I have ready for you. Okay. So excuse my background. I'm choosing not to blur it. I'm actually on a holiday, and this is just my background of the apartment that I'm actually inside. So just bear with my casual appearance as well. I guess it's all in the content, yeah? So here we go, coping skills for kids. In my professional opinion, coping skills are necessary for absolutely every single person and every single age. And so I'm also in the early childhood industry, and so I only find it appropriate that we develop some form of model for our children so that they can have some coping skills as well. So I'll go through my slide. A little bit about me. As I mentioned, I'm in the early childhood industry. I'm an early childhood teacher. I'm also a professional counsellor. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and I'm a strategic psychotherapist, and I'm an NLP master practitioner. Being in the early childhood industry, I also own some early learning centres as well. In addition, I have my private practice, and it's called Positive Thinking Clinic. So I'm a bit of both, but both blending in very well. So why did I choose coping skills for kids? The reason why I chose coping skills for kids is because all these kids of all ages, and also in the background adults as well, come into the clinic, into my private practice, in need of some form of coping skills. I realized that there is no one size fits all model. However, I did find it appropriate to develop some kind of formula just to use, not generically, but then to individualize for each individual child so that they can have something so that they can go to as a formula. And it's a C.O.P.E formula, C.O.P.E for COPE. So it's 4 steps. But what we do is we discuss it. We do it in guided visualization. We do it in art therapy. We do it in any form of discussion and for a number of different topics. So I do have a book out, and it's called My Coping Skills Handbook. It's 4 steps for kids to COPE or cope with everyday challenges. And I also have a coping skills course. This is specifically for kids to work through on their own. It's a number of modules. Right at the end, they get themselves a certificate as well. It becomes rewarding, and it's self-paced, and it's not for therapists, it's not for parents, or that they can do it with the children. It's aimed at, say, 6 or 8 years old up to about, say, 12 years old. Right at the end, I've got on my last slide, and I'm also going to email you an updated, or Trish will email you the updated links. It's going to have my links. There's also a free guide to the book. So there's no obligation to purchase anything, but you get to download a free guide. So any links you've received up until now, unfortunately, I had one of those situations where they are no longer working, and so they don't look as attractive, but they're just a big long link for, as you can see right here on the screen. I've had to put ClickFunnels and Kajabi on it, but it doesn't matter, it works, so it's no big deal. Now, I want to introduce to you the 4-step COPE formula. This is how it goes. It's C for curious, O for observe, P for positive, E for explorer. That's basically the key words to it. But the formula goes like this. C, so that you can be a curious detective. In other words, you become curious about the challenge. O, so you can observe your thoughts and feelings. This is a really important step. We need to teach children, and of course ourselves, the important process of dissociation so that we can become observers. Then we ask, what would my inner coping skills coach say or do instead? That's like your inner guide. And for any age and for any stage, it could be anything and anybody. We don't create that for the kids. We ask them, who would that be? And for some kids, it might be some famous basketball player that they create as a figurine inside their mind. Or it could be a cartoon, or it just could be another version of themselves. Could be an animal, could be absolutely anything. And P for positive outcome. So we really want to get kids to move into that space of what can I imagine as a positive outcome? And the reason why I did that is because too easily, kids and adults, we go to the negative before we tend to visit the positive. And so we teach them that, okay, we're up to C.O.P.E now for positive. Visualize how you want to solve the challenge. And then they can make up a funny or inspiring affirmation so that they can reframe the challenge. Reframing is a very important technique for any age group, of course. And then we move over to E, explorer. So we get them to think like an explorer so they can explore their options. There's lots of new thoughts, there's lots of new feelings and lots of new actions that they could try as they're presented with challenges. And I always like to say to kids, challenges are wonderful opportunities so that we can exercise our coping skills. So fear not any challenge. And lastly, try taking your inner coping coach's suggested action. So there we have it. It's just simple 4-step C.O.P.E formula. Curious, observe, be positive, be an explorer. Now I'd like to let you know what I discovered as I wrote my book. A lot of kids were coming in and I wondered to myself, what are the main themes? What are the main concerns that all these kids are bringing into clinic? And it just so happened to be they have a busy mind, or they have challenging moments where they're in a competition, say a running event or playing soccer or basketball or a dancing competition, so that they were finding it difficult not to win. So I made a chapter on it's okay to win and not to win. Another theme that they brought in was dealing with unkind thoughts and words. Kids are really struggling with unkindness at school. Another theme, managing pressure and stress. Doesn't that sound familiar to us as adults as well? Dealing with worry, another familiar thing. So we're seeing here that everything that we go through as adults, our children are going through. Everything that we find as solutions for ourselves, for adults, children have the same solutions. We just changed the language. Letting go of anger. Moving away from sadness. Making the most of relationships. And lastly, my last chapter is coping with anything, anytime. However, for the purpose of this presentation, I wouldn't get to fit in absolutely the coping skills for all of these topics. So I'm selecting some of my favorite ones, or the ones that I think will be pretty important for you. So let's start with the busy mind. Some kids come in and they say to me, I've just got so many thoughts in my head. I can't unwind. And believe it or not, we can have 6-year-olds saying this, just like we have 13-year-olds saying this. The concern here is that too many things, thoughts, ideas, fears, whatever they are in their mind, leads to overwhelm and also can lead to rumination. Both of these are very stressful, and they really interfere with the way that a child can enjoy their day or even unwind their day so that can go off to a nice sleep. And this picture here is pointed out by one of my clients who said, this is exactly how I feel, that my brain is just doing this inside my head. She actually used the word, I feel cuckoo. So I guess we can all relate to that at some stage of our lives or of our day. So this is what I suggest we do. We have a COPE formula. Now, I use the term slowing down our busy mind. We also use the term busy mind monster. We use child-friendly terms for kids just so that they don't fear a diagnosis or fear that there is something terribly wrong with them. These are just moments. That's all they are. And all we need to do is learn to deal with each moment as it arrives. And should a moment revisit us the next day, if we've practiced a coping method, we'll just practice it again. Because as we know, the mind gets good at what it practices. So if we're going to practice overwhelm or ruminating, we're going to be very good at that. So we practice the other end of the coin, which is some coping strategies, just so that we can unwind the mind. I'll also mention to you as well that these are best, I'm going to present these to you because I know you're a bunch of professionals and you'll do with them what you feel fits inside your therapy or your therapeutic methods. These fit well whether you do guided visualization, hypnosis, CBT, DBT, mindfulness, meditations, art therapy, whatever it is, you use them not exactly as I present them. Take them and do what you wish with them. Make them individualized for your clients. Include them in your discussions. Let kids do what they do with them. Quite often when I present them to kids, they will always, and I welcome them to do this, interrupt me and modify my formula. And I love that. That means they're personalizing it all by themselves. So here's the COPE formula for a busy mind. Be curious about the thoughts that you have. Challenge the ones that are not so useful. Remember, this all involves growth mindset. Sort them into the right containers and let go of the ones that are not helpful or important. Now, a note on containers. I'm going to teach you probably in the next slide a little technique that I use with kids. It's on compartmentalization. It's really effective. It's a great visualization. Then we go to O for observe. Observe your mind's busy habits so that you can learn your patterns. It's really important kids get to know, this is what I do, this is the pattern that I run. We'd like them to learn that they're patterns because we can always interrupt patterns. Observe how your thoughts make you feel and behave, because we want children not to avoid. We want them to feel, and we want awareness. That way they can do something about it. This helps you get to know yourself better. Then we get to the next part of the formula, P for positive. Write a positive affirmation about what you want instead. For example, I feel good about A because I get to choose B instead. So it's great to teach them to reframe. Regardless of what their original frame may be, what else could it be? We make suggestions, we explore, we grow the mindset. And we teach them, be the boss of your mind by planning when to attend to worries. Don't let your mind be the boss of you. I'll speak more about worries later. There's a really great formula for that as well. And lastly, E for explore. Explore new ways of being the boss of your busy mind. Let your mind be busy, but you get to control it instead of it controlling you. It will control you automatically, but then you intervene when it comes to your conscious attention. Make some rules about how you let your thoughts make you feel and behave. Write them down to remind yourself. I like writing things down, and I've noticed with kids, at the end of the session, write down what you've learned. It just reaffirms learning. It teaches them a new visual, and it'll help them remember. And here's the technique that I wanted to share. It's called the mind jars technique. Now, I'm using an example of jars, but I invite kids to choose whatever they want. It might be toy boxes. It might be pencil cases. It might be lunch boxes. It can be a shoebox. It can be absolutely anything. It needs to have a lid. Now, a word of caution. One child did say to me, but I don't believe we should bottle up our stuff. So we make sure that they know this is not about putting a lid on anything and bottling up anything. This is compartmentalizing, learning when to put the lid on and when to take it off, because there's a time and a place. So if you have a busy mind, let's say, for example, it's dinner time and your child is thinking about schoolwork, thinking about family stuff, thinking about a party they have to go to, thinking about, I don't know, an assessment, an exam, homework, or stuff that they're angry about. The truth is, that's not the right time to run a busy mind. And if we teach them, especially during a really nice guided visualization, that pick your containers and have one for each of your stuff. When that stuff arises, pull out from your imagery your jar, for example, for homework. Open the jar and say to yourself, right, I'm having dinner with my family right now. I'm not going to drive myself crazy about my math homework. So I'm going to stick it in my math homework jar, put on the lid, enjoy my dinner with my family. You see, this is what I mean. We're teaching them compartmentalization. After dinner, and they've gone to their room, and if that's when they've allocated time to do the math homework, they open up their jar and say, right, I need to sort this out. So pretty much this is a technique which we teach children. A great thing to teach adults as well. Of course, use your own techniques. It's just, in other words, parking something that doesn't need to occupy brain space at that moment. Now we move to dealing with unkindness. Unkindness is a great concern for our children. They bring a lot of it into clinic. Unfortunately, as they admit, not all mums and dads are aware of what's happening with unkind thoughts and words from others, e.g. at school, and even internally with themselves. Unfortunately, also, I keep hearing that any unkindness at school, it just continues. Maybe teachers haven't learned a way to really put a stop to it. Maybe they can't put a stop to it. But unfortunately, there's a lot of complaining about unkindness that goes witnessed and nothing is done about it. It really does affect our children. And while we teach them, there's nothing we can do about other kids. What can you do within yourself to deal with this unkindness? Not just from other kids, but let's say children are starting to develop that inner voice and they're being unkind to themselves as well. As you can see with this image, children really get to suffer. They suffer by themselves. They suffer inside. And if they do come to you, it's not as simple as giving them a formula, but you start there and you branch out so that they can access their internal resources. They do say that everything we need as coping, we're kind of born with. What happens is our coping skills become interfered with because of life and what life throws at you, the challenges that you can't get off you, they get stuck on you. So you get to become a support for these children. Let's look at the COPE formula for dealing with unkind thoughts and words. And remember, it's C.O.P.E. It's curious, it's observe, it's being positive, it's exploring. So become the curious detective. and challenge unkindness with your powerful mind. And we choose the word powerful mind is because some kids really think that my mind is against me. I hate my mind and I hate how I think and I hate my brain. But the truth is it can be our best asset as well. It becomes our solution. So we teach children to become really good friends with themselves and to be able to turn to themselves. We create a whatever mind bin. And probably in the next slide, I'll teach you a little bit more about the whatever. It's just a little technique kids can use, and they use it age appropriately. And it's really great to do during a hypnotic experience, a guided visualization, some form of imagery. And they can practice this as well. Observe. Remember, we want them to learn the ability to dissociate enough so that they can lower their emotions, increase their logical thought, be observers. We all work best when we're observing, whether it's ourselves or others. Observe how unkindness makes you feel. We want them in touch with themselves. That way, when they're in touch with themselves, they get to choose their responses. Quite often, kids are reactive. They'll respond or react. While a reaction is something that can happen automatically, a response is something that they can choose to control. And so therefore, getting them to the observer level helps them choose their responses to make wiser decisions. They'll use their whatever mind bin to throw away unkindness because really they need a visual. Otherwise, it's going to be stored within them. It'll just linger on in their head. Whereas it's another form of compartmentalization. Stick it in the bin, stick that lid on it as well. They don't need it to be circulating around them. Use your inner coping coach to let it go. Remember that inner coping coach that we spoke of right at the beginning? They can use it throughout all the different topics and all the different themes. It can become modified. They can change it for different topics and different ages as well. But they've got someone to go to. Remember, we want them to be able to rely on themselves. It's great speaking to an adult, a teacher, a trusted adult, anybody, but they're not always there at the times that they need them. So teaching them skills to always be able to count on themselves, it's a really good idea to do so. So using their inner coping coach to let it go and choose how they want to feel instead. Replace unkindness by smiling positively and straightening your posture. We all know that we need to play with our physiology. It plays with how we feel. Someone who's slouching, we do teach them. Straighten up your back, pull back your shoulders, rise up your chin a little bit, put your eyes a bit above the horizon, take some nice clean breaths. Changing physiology changes how we feel. We all know if we just slouch on down and look to the floor, we can change how we feel there as well. And then write down 3 or 4 positive things about yourself. And I've written here in the space below, and that's because I got this paragraph from my book. And there is a space below that says, write down your affirmations. Never accept unkindness as truth anymore. This is really important because especially during a young age, we form beliefs, do we not? And beliefs are formed by moments of unkindness, moments of challenging, moments of embarrassment, moments of failure, moments of fear. We form beliefs from the good stuff as well, but we want to be a word of caution about beliefs formed through unkindness. So we teach them it's not true. Just because someone is unkind or your imagination is unkind doesn't make it true. Negativity doesn't belong in your head or your body, although it visits. We can teach children it's okay for negativity to visit because that's real. It happens at any age and stage. So we need to know that that doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. We catastrophize. Negative distortions occur at any age and stage. We have a brain that does that. We can't control that. We control what we do once we become aware of it. And E, to explore new ways to respond to unkindness. Keep practicing getting good at letting unkindness go. So here we go. Here's a fun activity we can do with kids. Do you remember right at the beginning of that formula, I spoke of the whatever mind bin? Get kids to just close their eyes, take a minute to imagine whatever their version is of a whatever mind bin. I've got a real, I don't know, a skater here, but it can be anything. Could be a ballerina, can be anything that suits anybody. You store that mind bin anywhere in their mind. They can draw their own version, create their own version, make it out of Play-Doh. It doesn't matter. Bring it to life or just keep it in your imagination. Take a minute to think of something unkind that someone has said or has done to you, and then stick it in the bin. Or if they write it down, they screw it up, they cut it up, they rip it up, and they dump it inside their whatever mind bin. They can just visualize this as well. It works wonderful as a hypnotic experience, because in the end, you ask them what happened. You give them plenty of blank space and quiet time, and then they'll tell you their story of how they did it, because it's always self-hypnosis. We're just supporting. And then you get them to change their physiology, put a smile on their face and say, well, whatever. So that way they can disconnect from it and say, okay, I know now it's just words. They can't hurt me. It's just invisible words, invisible kindness. And of course, I made this super red because red is the color that I believe this should be. It's managing pressure and stress. Yes, I've heard 5-year-olds come and say, I feel so stressed. And it happens. So we're not going to deny that. Whether they learn it because they hear it, whatever it is, we got to know it's real. And they're training themselves now into pressure and stress. So if they come to us and if we have the opportunity to impact them, well, let's not waste the opportunity to support them and guide them and show them avenues away from and how to handle it. I really, really like to teach children in age-appropriate language that we have a dividing line. And here's a very cute photo of someone who seems very stressed. But you know, we can talk to children and we teach them that, okay, there's pressure and there's stress. We can't control pressure. We're going to get homework. There's going to be rules. We're going to be under pressure for a swimming carnival or for a race or for scoring goals in soccer. There's going to be pressure to do things on time. Life gets busy and the pressure is out there. And I know we're all adults listening to this, and we know there's pressure at work, there's life, there's financial pressure, there's things we cannot do anything about. But turning that into stress to a degree is optional. So we can say to children, okay, that's pressure, that's pressure, that's pressure. And like, we're not announcing what the pressure is. We ask them what they see as pressure. And they tell us what their pressures are. And please, whatever, if I'm using the word pressure, we have to explain to some children what pressure is. I'm putting that as a label now, just so that they know what it means. They may be using a different word, but pressure is there. We can't do anything about it. The best thing we can do is be aware and be organised. And I get, especially school kids, I'll give them a classic example of, okay, you and I are friends. You got the pressure of homework. I've got the pressure of homework. But how come you're stressed and I'm not stressed? Well, you've turned that pressure into stress, and I've chosen not to turn that pressure into stress. And then they're invited to ask me how. And then I'll gladly explain to them, well, if I organise myself, I give myself permission not to stress, because I know when I'm going to study for this, which day and for how long. So I have it all organised. So now I have permission to play and to watch my favourite TV shows, because I don't have to stress, because Everything is organized. So that's just a little simple technique. Works great for the early teens, especially when they're in high school, and then all of a sudden there's an abundance of pressure. Doesn't mean they have to match it with stress. So here's a COPE formula for managing pressure and stress. Become the curious detective and challenge the internal stress that you place on yourself. See, it's that you place on yourself, because I say it's optional. Let it be to a certain degree, a small degree, stress that we just can't help, but there's a big chunk of it that it's optional. We don't have to wear that, and we don't have to act that out. Notice the difference between external pressure and internal stress, just like the example that I gave you, and you could give them a similar example, one that's relevant to their life. Observe your reactions and be the boss of your mind. Remember, we did that in the last few slides. Would your inner coping coach ask you to change the way you speak about things? That's a great challenging question. It's always great not to tell children to do things. It's always great to ask them, well, I'll ask them a discriminating question. Well, how do you determine how to speak to yourself? How do you choose what language to use when you're speaking to yourself? It's really great for awareness, and it's really great for them to choose and decide that they are in control of changing things. They don't like to be told. They don't learn to be told, or by being told, do this instead. Sounds good. But if they come up with a suggestion all by themselves and that becomes reinforced, well, then there's a great exercise. Chances are they'll do that by themselves. Get them to write it down so they don't forget as well. And then make a list of positive things that you can control. And this is really important because they need to know, I get to control stuff on the inside of me. I do not get to control stuff on the outside of me. So the stuff that's on the outside of you, nothing you can do about it. How fast can you accept it? Give them a really nice hypnotic visualization, a guided visualization to know that, okay, I can't control that. I can let that go. Breathing techniques as they let things go work really well. While I just said that, breathing techniques, great for all children to learn about breathing. One thing I've learned about children and breathing is they say that they've learned breathing, but they haven't really learned breathing. So they need to learn the correct way of breathing. They think breathing is just breathing in, just breathing out. That's great, but teaching them to extend their external exhale longer than their inhale is much more effective physiologically, just to calm the system. So teaching them why, because I didn't know either until someone taught it to me, even though we were breathing to stay alive. And breathing is great just so that they can focus their attention on their breath. Great. So that was just an interruption of my quick brain thought about breathing. Make a positive, use an affirmation to help you focus on your positive outcome after they've done a list of positive things that they can control. So not just the positive list is important, turn them into affirmations. You might throw an example just to get it started and get them to make their own. There is no right or wrong. It's all about being creative. Remember, when children are creative and curious, they become empowered and helps them find pathways to solutions. And lastly, explore. Explore what you need to do to stay out of the chaos and the drama, because that's what it is in the end, chaos and drama. Think about your current pressures and make a plan, or even just ask for help. Play. Play, 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 we say to kids, just so that they know that being creative means let me play and find my solutions. So here we are, playing with writing our own rules. Here's an example. Rule number 1, I always make a plan to handle what is asked of me. Rule number 2, I always base my story on facts. That's a really important rule, because if it's not just facts, it's facts plus your imagination, which is not useful. Rule 3, I let imagined dramas fade. Give them a visual on this. When they notice there's there's a drama that they're imagining. Well, what are you going to do about it? Give them a technique to use. It can be fading off with the breath. It could be fading off an NLP technique for those of you who are NLP trained. There's a number of, they can create their own imagery. Children are so creative. We as adults, we've had to learn creativity because we forget, but children, they've got it. Rule 4, I'm in charge of the pressures I create for myself. Empowerment, being the boss of your own mind. Rule 5, other people's pressures belong to them and not me. This is critical, especially school-aged kids. They come home with everybody else's dramas. And so it's okay to care for our friends and to be, sympathetic and empathetic, but no, there's a boundary. Stuff belongs to them. It doesn't mean I don't care. It just doesn't belong to me. It's a way of learning self-care and to protect ourselves. Okay, really important one here, dealing with worry. Worry is a big thing. And I don't know if any of you are aware of this. There's this great thing. It's probably on the internet somewhere. It's the worry decision tree. And it's really great when kids, even adults, say, oh, I've got worry and I don't know what to do about my worry. Worry is only useful when it leads to an action. And like the decision tree, it's like you imagine a Christmas tree, and like at the tip of it is your worry. And then the question is there something I can do about this? Yes or no? If it's no, I cannot do anything about this. Well, the truth is worrying about it isn't going to solve anything. But if there is something you can do about it, okay, you're on a good pathway. Now you go down the next branch and you say, okay, so is it something I can do about it now, or do I have to do something about it later, which means I'll schedule what I need to do? Remember, worry is only useful if it leads to a plan or an action. So if there's something you can do about it, do it now, get over and done with, and your worry can then be dismissed and can go away. Or if it's something that you can't do anything about it now, schedule it in. Later, I'll do this. Tomorrow, I'll do that. Because it's planned for, it's scheduled in, you have permission not to worry about it until that moment when you've got something to do. The problem we all face is that we continue worrying about something we can't do anything about, and it really occupies brain space and it interrupts our day. And kids should be having fun, playing, organising, running around, doing their homework, whatever they're doing, instead of having that worry. So teaching them, again, it's a form of compartmentalisation. Is this worry useful? If it's not, I have permission to let it go. If it's a useful worry, I'm going to plan to do something about it. I know I'm rushing through it, guys, but I hope I'm explaining it as best as I possibly can. Here's an image of somebody who could be worrying, hiding behind their hands, thinking, what am I going to do about this? And all we need to do is teach them that there is something you can do about your worry. And in the next couple of slides, I'll show you how. But first, let's look at the COPE formula for dealing with worry. Become curious. Be a curious detective. Challenge the worry. Remember, worries aren't there. They fear us. They cause fear to us, but we don't have to be afraid of them. They're a message. It's an alert. It's nothing we should ignore. It's just something that we need to become aware of. Sort the worries into those that you can do something about now and those that you can't do anything about yet, and those that don't even really matter. That part's really important too. Sometimes we're worrying about things that we think we should worry about, but in the scheme of things, do we really need to worry about it? Hypnosis, NLP techniques, CBT, art therapy, Santra, anything can help children really visualize that, oh, I can shrink that worry. It's not so big after all. It was occupying a big space in my brain, but it doesn't have to. I've reframed that. Observe whether your imagination is getting carried away with the images and the stories that it creates. We all know how to create those mental movies that just worry after worry, and we catastrophize. But guess what? replace that with a new imagery, a new little movie. And we teach children to do that. Make a few different scenes, put it together in hypnosis, in a guided imagery, get them to practice it, and then get them to practice it for homework as well. That way we fade out the old pattern that they've learned, because worry patterns are patterns that we learn as well. Well, so can joyful patterns. So we choose to deliberately replace or crowd out worries, especially if they're unnecessary and they just come in our minds. And it's part of that process where, well, I can't help it. If I'm doing nothing, then that comes in my head. And therefore, that's why I do other things. Well, we teach them to be okay with being in their head, but to choose what they're going to recycle in their minds. Write out your positive plan of action. You can ask an adult or your inner coping coach for help. That way, someone is available. And if they're not available, you've got yourself. Visualize letting it go using one of the examples that I'll show you soon. Explore the possibility of whether your mind is holding on to the worry for a reason or not. Can you simply say no to it and put it in the whatever mind bin, perhaps? And then you can get on with what you were doing. Okay. A couple of little examples I'll show you. I'll say them in like 5 seconds, but you can stretch them out with kids and make it a really nice visualization. They love it. And even in the end, they can create their own. They can visualize that they're releasing their worries. They can draw a cloud, whether it's in their mind or on paper or in dirt or in the air, it doesn't matter. Place their worries on that cloud, visualizing it drifting away, taking your worries away, especially when you don't need them. We only need worries when we need to sort them out, put a plan in place. After that, off you go. Well, here's another one. These come from ideas from kids as well, not just stereotyped ideas. Here's a train. Draw a train, whether it's in your mind again or wherever. Load all of your worries onto the train. Different carriages. Make the train look as you wish. Don't worry about whatever image I've got here. And let the train move away and take your worries with it. Create the distance. This is what we're doing, creating a distance. Say goodbye to your worries. Another one. Some kids love rockets. So visualize a rocket, send it out into space with a blast. As it lands on different planets, visualize it dropping off your worries along the way. Let them be creative. They might speak about meteors, whatever it is, as long as they've got a process. We're just guiding them and supporting their technique. Say goodbye to your worries. And lastly, I'm going to speak about coping with anything, anytime. This is basically everything summed up. Remember right at the beginning, I told you there's COPE formulas for letting go of sadness, letting go of anger, what to do with relationships as well. I didn't get to talk about them all in this presentation today, but right at the end, you want kids to be able to say, well, I can cope with anything, anytime. So remember, the basic formula is C.O.P.E, right? It's being curious, it's being an observer, it's being positive, it's being an explorer. And all of these are flexible. They can mean slightly different things for absolutely everybody. Now, remember, challenging moments are wonderful opportunities to exercise coping skills. We use courage only, we can actually only ever use courage when we're in a situation of fear and worry. So we can't be totally relaxed and say, oh, I'm going to practice some courage here. It's when we're feeling what we're feeling that we get to have an opportunity to exercise courage. So let's see now. Emotions. And this is how we're going to learn or teach children about coping with anything, anytime. Emotions, they show up. They can be joyful, there can be shame, there can be feelings of satisfaction, worries, being hesitant, guilty, happy, whatever they are. Sometimes there are emotions that aren't recognized in the body, but they show up. Sometimes they show up as a sick feeling in your tummy. Sometimes, and you feel nauseous. Sometimes they show up as butterflies. But you know, they disguise themselves as sensations, right? Now, one thing I really like to teach kids and adults, and I just assume most of you already know this, that my classic example is that anxiety and excitement have the exact same physiological responses. There's a beauty in that. We then have the power and the control to interpret. The bad side of things is kids will feel something and they'll give a negative interpretation. Oh my God, I'm scared, I'm worried, I'm anxious. What if they said, oh my goodness me, feelings of excitement. That means I'm nearly finished that. I'm excited to do this. I'm ready to give it a go. And I'm going to take these wonderful, exciting feelings with me. And I know this because I myself as an adult experienced this. My friend and I were about to start a run. We love running, or I love running, she doesn't. And right at the beginning of the start line, we're both behaving, jumping, jittery, cold, and acting exactly the same physiologically. And as I turned to her and I said, how are you feeling? She said to me, oh, I'm so blah, blah, anxious. Well, I said to her, wow. I said, I'm so excited. And in my head, I thought, how true is it? I could have simply said to myself, I'm anxious too, and I would have believed it. She could have said to herself, I'm excited just to get this over and done with, and she would have believed it. So we teach children the language that you use is extremely important. So we train them into reframing absolutely everything into a positive. Don't even worry about it being positive. Neutral is good enough, especially when we've got thundering negativity around us. COPE formula for coping with anything, anytime. Don't worry, Trish, I'm on track. Be curious about everything. If you experience a strong sensation, when you have an emotion or a thought, just stop, call upon your inner coaching team, into your control room, which is your brain. Ask the team, which of the coping skills will help you? Observe your body. Make a list. Doesn't have to be on paper. It could be in your head, of your emotions, of your thoughts, of your sensations, because we want you to be aware. You'll find there'll be a group of kids that you say, and what do you feel? What do you experience? And their answers will be, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So your job now is to get them to be aware. They need to know. They need to say, when this happens, I feel this and I experience that, and that happens. Because then you've got something to work with. Teach them, are there any patterns? Get them to know themselves. They can consult with their inner coping coaching team so they can work out the emotions and the sensations and see what they mean for them. It's not up to us to tell them what they mean. Use a positive affirmation each week. Repeat it to yourself every time you need some extra support. A lot of kids do this already. And they can use things like, I love and accept myself, or I'm learning to let stuff go. And explore other patterns that arise when you don't feel right. You're in control of how you react, and look for ways to move forward and create that better version of you. Thank you, everybody. We say, don't cop it, cope with it. Don't worry about these links. I'm hoping that Trish is going to give them to you, and they're just my social media links if you did want to connect with me. And these are my new links that are updated, unattractive, but updated. If you wanted the free guide, and if you wanted the book or the course that I do for kids.
I'll
Thank you
definitely be
for all
sending
of
out
your
links
attention.
tonight. So thank you so much, Amanda. If you have any questions, we do need to move on to the next speaker, which is Lois Herman, and she's going to be talking about inspiring hope in times of change. But if you have any questions, please flip them to me or reach out to Amanda on her webpage, and I will get them on through. But honestly, I think even I just had a heap of light bulb moments with coping, to be honest. So thank you so much. So jump on over to the next speaker. We do have Lois Herman, and we'll catch you all in the future, okay? So see you.